Okay, I'll read it today. Oops, I'm not in the box. Oh dear. So Frog and Toad, storybook treasury. That is because books are treasure. I don't know if you knew that, but they are. The story. One day in summer, Frog was not feeling well. Toad said, "Frog, you are looking quite green." "But I always look green," said Frog. "I am a frog." "Today you look very green, even for a frog," said Toad. "Get into my bed and rest." Toad made Frog a cup of hot tea. Frog drank the tea, and then he said, "Tell me a story while I'm resting." "All right," said Toad. "Let me think of a story to tell you." Toad thought and thought, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. "I will go out onto the front porch and walk up and down," said Toad. "Perhaps that will help me to think of a story." Toad walked up and down the porch for a very long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Then Toad went into the house and stood on his head. "Why are you standing on your head?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I stand on my head, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. Toad stood on his head for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Then Toad poured a glass of water on his head. "Why are you pouring water on your head?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I pour water over my head, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. Toad poured many glasses of water over his head. But he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Then Toad began to bang his head against the wall. "Why are you banging your head against the wall?" asked Frog. "I hope that if I bang my head against the wall, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. "I'm feeling much better now, Toad," said Frog. "I do not think I need a story anymore." "Then you get out of the bed and let me get into it," said Toad, "because now I feel terrible." Frog said, "Would you like me to tell you a story, Toad?" "Yes," said Toad, "if you know one. Only then." "Once upon a time," said Frog, "there were two good friends, a frog and a toad. The frog was not feeling well. He asked his friend the toad to tell him a story. The toad could not think of a story. He walked up and down on the porch, but he could not think of a story. He stood on his head, but he could not think of a story. He poured water over his head, but he could not think of a story. He banged his head against the wall, but he could not think of a story. Then the toad did not feel so well, and the frog was feeling better. So the toad went to bed, and the frog got up to tell him a story. The end. How was that, Toad?" said Frog. But Toad did not answer. He had fallen asleep. What did you think of that, friends? Have you heard this story before? I really like it. Sometimes I can't think of stories either, and it's usually because I'm trying to tell a perfect story. You know, where all the characters are perfect and everything that happens is perfect. Do you ever have that problem? I do a lot. But the thing is, perfect stories aren't very interesting. Anyway, Are you going to tell any stories this week? Oh, you know what I would love? I would love it if you wrote a story and sent it